Hey everyone, I'm Brian Austin Green.
I'm Sharna Burgess.
And I'm Randy Spelling.
And you are listening to Oldish, an iHeartRadio podcast. Hello everyone. Welcome. Randy, welcome. Sharna.
I'm right next
Welcome,
to you, baby.
Brian.
Yeah.
Hi. Well, welcome back to all of you listeners. And I guess Brian and Sharna, welcome back from Las Vegas again.
Vegas.
We were in Vegas with the kids.
So
no
good.
less.
So good. My niece got married, and so we were there for a wedding. The kids were in it. It was amazing. It's crazy for me now being 50, remembering when my niece was born, and she is now 39.
39, yeah.
Right? And married.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm at her wedding, and she's walking down the aisle, and there was that part of me that was like, I cannot believe that this is happening right now.
And she was such a rock star too. Like, she planned the whole thing herself. And it made me realize I shall not be planning our wedding myself.
Yeah.
I shall not be doing that. We will absolutely have a wedding planner. Even though she did the most incredible job and everything was absolutely perfect, the stress levels that I know she's been going through in the months leading up to it, that is not for me. And I'm incredibly proud of her for doing what she did. And they had such an amazing time. Bodie and Journey were ring security. Yeah. They looked like...
I was wondering.
They looked like little men in black. They went up in their tuxes. They had on the black aviators with an earpiece and ring security and a briefcase with the rings in them.
Briefcases with the... It was so fun.
My God. It was
cute.
delicious.
I've never even heard that term, ring security. So not the ring bear.
Yeah,
you know what it reminded me of was the Men in Black on Masked Singer. When I did that show that would come out with whoever is in a costume, you would have the suited, security almost looking people that would come in. It was kind of the same thing.
That's
it was really
amazing.
Fun.
Did they love it? Did they love doing it?
They loved it.
They did, yeah.
They've never worn tuxes before, so that was a big thing.
And dress shoes.
And they absolutely loved it. We were worried that they would, because they are like shorts and no show socks and t-shirts all the time.
Yeah.
So we were like, oh, how's this going to go over? Like, are they just going to be doing this the whole time?
Yeah,
and,
pulling on their collars.
And they weren't. They loved it.
Yeah,
it was
they
amazing.
had an amazing time. We had an amazing time, and Vegas was super easy, and it was fun. Good food and a good time in and out.
Great.
Yeah, we got back this morning and rushed the kids off to school. Like, literally came in, rushed in, made the lunches. Like, thank God my mum was here. She helped out with everything as well. Bri raced them to school and got back just in time so we can sit here and hang with you and talk about all the things. Life is busy. Parenting, it's a lot.
Life is super busy. Life in general, I mean, just headline wise, when you go into the store, it's busy. There's just a lot happening.
Yeah,
right
always.
There's just a lot happening in the world right now.
Yeah.
So much. It's funny. I mean, this is sort of a ridiculous headline, but I was reading the other day as you were flying back on the plane today. Yeah. I was reading about United Airlines. Did you hear about this?
Yes,
that
the
they're
new
changing
boarding
the
thing.
seating, the boarding policy, like how they do it.
We flew Southwest.
It makes perfect sense though. Like reading their design idea and what it is they're doing. To me,
Do you think?
I think it does. To me, if you can create a more orderly way of people boarding a plane and getting rid of the sort of craziness involved in people having to get up and move around and put bags in the you kind of sidestep that. I think it's invaluable. I think you could save time for sure.
I'm definitely all for trying something that's going to save time on the boarding process, because it really does suck when you get on, you're like, oh, sorry, and you're going to make people get up because you're in the middle of the...
I don't know how it could go wrong. I could be naive in this.
Well, let's say what it is.
Okay.
So from what I was understanding, it's called Wilma.
Yes.
Which
I don't know what that stands for, by the way.
So it's supposed to be window, middle, aisle. I don't know what the L is.
Oh, the I. Oh, window, W-I-L.
So W-I for window, and then there's the L, which I don't understand, and then it's middle aisle. So the idea is, and I love this too, first class, business class, they do it the same exact way.
Oh, that's exactly the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They go in
nothing
first.
changes until economy.
Nothing changes until you're, cattle in the back, basically. And then, once you get there, it's like, we're going to do it a little bit more orderly. So it's window. But here's what I was wondering. It makes sense, big picture. Like, okay, all the windows go in first.
Right.
But it's some sort of like hierarchy or something. I'm a window. I go first. and then the windows go in, and then the middle. So do the window seats go up? Because that's going to be the most coveted because they go in first.
Aren't window seats? Oh no, it's really by section. I was going to say, aren't they more expensive when you do seat selection anyway? No. But I do get it. Like the middle seat is the one that sucks, and yet they're the second one to board, and aisle goes last. Like I would always rather be a window or an aisle if I'm sitting. So in that sense, it's not really hierarchy because middle still sucks no matter whether you board before the aisle or not. You're still stuck in the middle of two people, not on your whole flight. So I don't know if that plays into hierarchy.
That's an interesting question. If it creates sort of a hierarchy, and I didn't think about it that way. I'm not.
I mean, it just seems.
I'm not
strange.
sure if I feel that it would, but I can understand how it would be perceived that way.
I mean, you are naming it Wilma from the Flintstones. You know, you think of
totally.
Like Flintstones and Fred and Wilma and Bam
I loved
Bam.
Wilma, yeah, and Bam Bam.
Yeah.
Zane's a little Bam
Zane
Bam.
is a little Bam Bam. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it does suck though that it's only economy that does that. That it's not everyone that's subject to this boarding process. Everyone else, if you pay enough money, you don't have to go through any changes. It makes sense though, because you still get priority. You're fine.
But those sections are so much smaller and tend not to hold up the boarding process as much as the economy section, which is probably 3/4 of the plane.
True. I guess that's a really good argument for it as well. But it doesn't just include those, 12 seats that are in business class on those flights. Maybe it's a little more for some. But it's also anyone that has paid the money for Premier Access or to be a gold or a silver member or whatever. So that's more than just the business class seats. But it's probably half the plane that has some sort of membership that's going to board first.
I don't know if those are different seats necessarily or different levels of being a part of United's alliance plan, or I don't know how, Star Alliance. I have no idea how it works, but I've never been on a plane and been like, oh, those are the business, premium seats, and then those are the bit like it's you have a set. I've always seen a section. I've seen first possibly business and then economy. There's usually, for the most part, 3 sections on a plane.
Right.
And honestly, in a lot of respect now, there are 2 sections. Most planes that you get on there is sort of like a first business that is combined.
Yeah.
And then you have economy after that.
That's true.
Or you get some sort of premium economy, which, you pay extra for 3 inches or 2 inches.
Yeah, you get more leg room.
Like, okay,
yeah.
I have 2 inches and my legs can go from here to here.
Yeah, I slightly get a little straighter. Yeah.
Right. The seat only goes back about that much. Yeah.
I think this whole seating plan is all good and well until you're the one that's on the aisle seat and you've got to board last and you have nowhere to put your baggage. You have no. What are you going to do about that? Like,
this is what I was thinking because I'm an aisle guy. I really like the aisle. I don't necessarily. I like looking out, but I don't like to be squeezed in.
Well, I think you should be penalized for that. I think I absolutely see the issue with having you on, and I think you should have trouble finding a place to put your bag, and you deserve that treatment.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying. Aisle is the outcast now. Yeah. Middle is actually going to be more coveted because if you want to carry on, you're going to have to get a window or an aisle because
to make sure you
window
get space.
Or a middle because if you're an aisle, you're screwed.
Yeah, totally. It's a really good point.
No more room for you.
I mean, it screws someone over no matter what, right?
Well, and here's the thing too to think is that, most people don't fly by themselves. They fly with somebody. So are they then buying a window and a middle seat? So they are sitting together. Like it's, that whole boarding issue is, we were looking at that also for families and trying to figure out how that works. And so we were reading up on it.
I guess the family can go together. That's what I
saw. Whoever
groups,
has the highest level of seating within the economy cabin, their group gets to board with them.
I'm really curious to know other people's thoughts on this when they message us, because that's going to be fun. I don't know.
Yeah, it's such a simple thing, but it's who knows. It could create such a headache and such a nightmare.
People could be pissed.
Look, Wilma.
Wilma.
Who knew?
I'm all for upgrades. I'm all for changing systems because I think there are many systems that are broken or that don't work well. But I have a novel idea. Instead of the seating, figure out how to get across country an hour or two quicker. I mean, have you ever noticed that planes
Like speed the
kind of
plane
have
up?
the same exact technology that they did 80, 90 years ago? Like,
Yeah.
look how far cars have come.
Yeah.
Look at all of the ingenuity, all of the technology.
Right.
Do you mean to tell me that that plane can't go any quicker? They can't do anything
Well, they
more?
can though, right? They totally can go faster.
Thinking about, because that's another great point. Thinking about that though, if you're an air traffic controller and you have airplanes flying at different speeds all across the country, it seems like it would be much harder to keep track of
what if we
what planes
just
are
upped
where.
everyone's speed though?
But what about the planes that couldn't be upped then, that are older technology and things
Got
like
you.
that?
Like Spirit Airlines.
Right, totally. Yeah.
They're not going faster. You don't want them to. You really don't want them to.
So
you might lose a win.
It becomes a thing of like you have one airplane that is going, 400 miles an hour, and then another one that's going 600, but you've got air traffic control that is monitoring thousands of planes in the air at the same time across the country.
It's a good question.
That's true.
It's a really
that
good
makes
point.
my head spin.
Yeah, it makes my head spin too.
How do you make sure that the plane that can fly twice the speed of the other one isn't going to end up right in the path of these slower flying planes?
Totally.
I think it's almost like creating like on a freeway, you have, speed limits. And I think that's the reason, is sort of to maintain some sort of uniform travel within those areas. I would assume.
All right, baby. Coming out with the good
I'm
answer.
just making this up. I have no idea, because I could be completely wrong, which 9 times out of 10 I am completely wrong. So I'm fine with that. But I just this idea.
No,
is
you
the thought.
could be right. Look, it's like people who argue flat Earth and the flat Earth theory. You could sit and come up with all these concepts as to why that is, why it makes no sense. And I mean, you can go back and forth. I'm sure there are people who could let us know if airplanes could go different speeds. And
why they don't. Maybe there's someone that is in this business that could tell us why they don't go fastest. Yeah.
Help us.
We need to know.
Right. Help us find the answer to this question, because it is eating at this group.
So
they have electronic cars. They have Teslas.
Have you seen the car that can now fly? Did you see that one? That they have now, I don't know if they've approved it for the road, but there has been in some sort of approval, the first flying car where the wheels tuck under as propellers and that thing flies. Like, we are heading into the Jetsons. At this point. Yeah.
But
how it's so sad? So many people won't know that reference.
Right.
Maybe our listeners will, because we oldish.
Are you with us?
Yeah.
Or
if you know them,
are we totally
please tell me you
dating
know
ourselves?
the Jetsons. Please.
Honestly, I just want a meal. I want a machine that spits out whatever meal that I want. That's one of the things.
Was that
in the
Willy
Jetsons.
Wonka? No, that was
That
chocolate
was
from
Back
the
to
TV.
the Future.
That was the Jetsons. That's you had what was the maid's Rosie would go to the machine and would push the button and the doors would open and it's like, there's your burger and there's your stuff.
Totally.
The concept of that is amazing. So imagine
they have that. It's called Las Vegas room service where you
Yeah,
were.
absolutely it is.
but no. So imagine if you are gluten-free or vegan, and so you could program your machine to stick to those dietary restrictions and only give you food that fits within that.
Yummy,
That would be
food.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Invent it. I
Invent
just think
it.
with
Someone.
the technology that exists, I don't know. I just think of these things like we're looking at United and the Wilma system.
Yeah.
Sounds like the Wilma. Hey, you guys, we're implementing Wilma today.
Yeah.
Let's cut the ribbon on this Wilma idea.
Don't ask what the L means. We don't know. We're just going with it. It just sounds
You
good.
have Fred back there?
Yeah.
So, you have Wilma and you have these small incremental changes, and then you hear about a flying car, which I don't even understand. If a car can fly, how do you then regulate airspace? How do you
Oh my
control
God, my brain hurts. No.
Oh yeah,
Right?
it's a whole
But
a whole different thing.
I think of these things and I think, look, even things that are happening around the world, things that are going on, I'm like, it's archaic. We're so elevated in so many ways. We have access to such technology, and yet there are things that are just so primitive, right? I mean, you have men and women who get in a ring and beat each other up until someone taps to submission.
Right.
Like some of these things,
Right.
look, I enjoy watching. I used to enjoy watching these things, but some of these things just feel so archaic. Like, of course, the technology exists for a flying car. They have airplanes that can go at the speed of light and beyond.
Right.
All that technology exists.
Right.
Where is it? Bring this in. Come on.
Yeah. Why are you hiding it from us?
Don't hide it from us.
It's tough though, because you're talking about then needing the infrastructure to support that kind of a change, because that is a massive global change at the point when at the point when you say, okay, flying cars, it's on, let's do this. It's like, okay, so now we have to globally rethink, how does that function? How does that work? If
We can barely get like the infrastructure for electric cars. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Built in place for us to do that, let alone flying cars.
Right.
You know, I think we're
our,
a while
our
away
house
from
is
that.
still on septic. Okay, so
Yeah,
like,
it really is.
It's like let's take our time on some of these things, because if we don't have the infrastructure in place to be off of septic at this point,
Are you chopping wood for heat over there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yes,
Eating
yes, we are.
tons of fruit.
Yeah.
Growing
We have the
our
kids
own.
riding bicycles out the back for the electricity, you know, to
Right.
generate the electricity for us.
I did that at a Coldplay concert. That was actually so much fun.
I've seen videos of that. It actually looks like a lot of fun.
Did they have like entire sections of people that would ride?
They have
bikes
two
or-
sections, and it's called, the kinetic energy section, and people are dancing and jumping on a floor, and it's actually storing up energy so that the next show, when they power the small stage that they have, and they power other things through that.
Yeah.
It's so cool
It's so cool.
actually be in a place where you can be a part of how something functions.
Yeah, that's amazing.
There's purpose in that. Like, it feels like you're doing something that is a good cause somehow.
That's immersive on a really cool level. You know, I love that. I want to see Coldplay live, man. We were just having this conversation the other day that if there's anyone I want to see live, there's a lot of people, to be honest, but Coldplay is one of them.
Have you seen any of the video of the U2 show in Vegas at the Sphere? They opened that.
God.
Sphere.
The outside was just like breathtaking for me to see. But then when you see video of the inside and the experience of being there, it's unbelievable how immersive that place truly is.
I can't wait to go see that, actually. Anything.
I
anything
wondered how that is, because it looks incredible, a sort of a once in a lifetime show. But I also heard people who get dizzy or motion sickness, that it can be hard for them because it's pretty steep the way that it's stacked, and then you have this complete sphere, and it feels like you're, what do they call that, the holotropic or 3D holotropic, so it feels like you're moving into the screen.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds. I mean, for me, that sounds like a good time.
Sounds
But, you
fun.
know,
I get
yeah.
sick on like the Simpsons ride at Universal.
Yeah, he doesn't go on it.
That's motion sickness for me is not my friend.
No, it's not.
So I can only imagine that that screen, that experience could it could make me feel terrible.
Before just jumping into some of the pop culture type headlines that have been making waves for the last 2 weeks and that we're going to discuss today, we have to take a moment to just acknowledge what's happening in the world. Our hearts, just like yours, are really, really heavy. Look, what's happening is so utterly devastating, and it can feel really strange to just talk about normal things and, discuss life as normal, business as usual, when all of this is happening. But look, our job is to deliver content in the way that we do. We're going to continue to do that for you. But please know that the news and the information is coming out at a head-spinning rate. So we're trying to keep up. We're watching, we're listening, and we're learning. Please, we ask you, do not ascribe meaning to the lack of coverage on this humanitarian issue, or at times, silence. We are deeply affected by all lives lost, and we know that so many of you are too. we have been discussing a way to try and dedicate a whole episode to the topic of how we discuss things like this that are so heated and, even at times polarized. How can we come together to discuss this and not just ostracize people? And many of you have actually written us and asked lately for lighter type episodes. Maybe this is something that's needed. So today we thought that we would do just that and discuss some topics that have been in the news and that people have been scratching their heads about. So let's get into some pop culture headlines and dig into what actually makes this relatable to each of us.
Some of the things that we've been looking at this week bring up other questions that I think are important to talk about or interesting to talk about. And one of the big headlines is Britney and her memoir that she is releasing. And I have to admit, when we discussed that we were going to do a headlines episode, I was kind of like, oh, I don't know what it is we're going to talk about. I don't like talking about other people in that sense. And then I went on as much of a dive as I could in reading about Britney's story, because I truly didn't know that much about it. I didn't dive into the Free Britney movement. I don't get involved with headlines like that. You know what I mean? And when I started reading this story and timelines of her conservatorship and the things that she's been through, it was devastating for me as a woman, as a fan of hers, as a human being, to read her experiences of the last not only 13 years of her conservatorship, but her life and how she's been exploited by her family and people and the people that she was supposed to trust. And I think it's a really important conversation to have, because I think it happens to people everywhere. They are exploited by the people that love them sometimes. And I think there are conservatorships out there that probably aren't healthy. It's just Britney's has had a spotlight on it because it's been so public. But I'd love to know, like, Randy, some of your thoughts on the things that you have seen, and Bri, yours too. I just know that we've been talking about it with each other on the things that you've been seeing with Britney. You know, she's finally coming out and feels free enough to speak about her experiences, and she now has the freedom to do it.
Yeah, it's
right. It's tough.
Yeah, it's so layered. I mean, so my take on a conservatorship in general is, not even in general, with this one especially, is I think it in a lot of cases can remove the journey that people are supposed to go through. They go through these times in life where they try, they fit. We talk about it all the time. You fail. There are bumps. There are roadblocks. There are things that you have to deal with. When people step in and say, oh, I'm just going to take care of all this for you, you're just going to live by my rules, you then eliminate someone's ability to learn and grow as they're going through life. So then for her to now come out of that, it's what part of life does she then have to start from before it started? How much has she missed of the normal progression and learning of life in life being handled this way?
Yes, and it's very hard to get back. I think people who go to prison, and it's hard to compare the two, right? But it's like their life is taken away, and it's structured in such a way where they miss out on, years or decades. And I think with Britney, what is so challenging to watch, we mentioned this in the addiction episode, I think we did in the Q&A part, is a lot of times when an addiction starts, you get stunted at that age.
I was just going to say, normally when people are in recovery, don't they sort of go back to the point when things took a turn and they have to live life from that point forward again without that device that they used?
Yes, at least that's what it feels like. So if someone starts using or becomes addicted to porn and it takes them over, let's say, then, and that happens at 24, they kind of stop at 24. And I think with Britney, look, she was in the spotlight from a little girl. I mean, she was in the Mickey Mouse Club, right? So her way of viewing life and handling life might be very different. So you have that aspect to contend with. And I think, I want to ask both of you about this, because you both have lived the sort of celebrity spotlight and still do and have to think about these things. So we'll get to that in a moment. But, for Britney, it seems like she, I don't know, in some ways when I see her, I just see a little girl who's trying to figure it out and trying to come back to this place of homeostasis, but not fully understanding and being able to drop into the homeostasis of the age that she's at now. It's like she's still back then.
She's a grown woman going through what we went through as young,
almost puberty,
kids.
Right? Well, she did, in the stuff that I've read and listened to. One of the things that she said is that with this conservatorship, she wasn't allowed to be an adult. She would regress, and she says this in her own words, that she would regress and act out like a teenager because it's the way that she was being treated. She was treated like a child that couldn't make any decisions for herself, and so and exactly what Brian said, she wasn't allowed that space to grow and to, explore, working through whatever was going on with her. And there were a lot of things going on with her. And I do believe that what she says is true. This shaving her head was an act of rebellion against people that constantly had an opinion and a say over her body and what she did with it and the way that it looked, instead of her having a say over her own body and what she did with it and the way that it looked. It was constantly being taken away from her. She was constantly being exploited and objectified. So she gets pissed at a paparazzi guy with an umbrella. How many people do you see acting out like this today? And as she even says in her own words, how many male artists do you see blowing all their money or drinking it all away or making terrible decisions? No one took their rights away to live their life. She was made to give up complete control to other people, predominantly men, her father and a lawyer, to control every single thing about her life and make all of her decisions for her. So she regressed into being a little girl because that's the way they treated her. And I think that does rob her of being able to grow into a mature woman. And we see her now discovering how to handle and be on social media and in life as herself.
You see little kids that have these just complete breakdowns because they don't know how to articulate what it is they want. And so they'll kick and scream and they'll put on some big show. And because they are kids and that is the only way that they can be heard. So it's like, then you control someone's life beyond when that is supposed to naturally sort of take its course and you move on from it. And instead you keep someone within that space, but then you penalize them for acting out within the only way that they can. The only way that she could was shaving her head, having these acts of rebellion because they were the small piece of her life that she still could have some sort of say so.
And she had no support on top of all of this, no support or anyone in her corner helping her know how to deal with these huge life changes, with the world watching her going through them. Everyone just wanted to keep making more money off of her and exploiting her. So who was in her corner at the end of the day? You know what I mean? And that's, I think, incredibly heartbreaking. And I don't know all the facts, and I should honestly back this up by saying I don't know all the facts. I've tried to read as much as I can this week about her, and maybe she did have people in her corner over the years that tried. But, I think we've seen what her experiences have been or what she's been open to sharing. I, for one, definitely want to read her memoir to know more about this story that seems so unbelievable to me that it could happen to this woman. It's crazy.
Yeah. I guess, what I wonder too is how did it get there? I mean, how do you get from what she was doing and how she was performing, she was recording. How do you get from there to the conservatorship where it seemed like all of her freedoms were taken away?
So what I read was that her family had taken her to an involuntary, I'm saying it right, psych evaluation. 2 within a month. The first one, she was released and there was no recommendation for a conservatorship and whatnot. And then within a month, they took her to another hospital for
they wanted a second
an
opinion.
Involuntary, observation or evaluation. And out of that one, a temporary conservatorship was recommended, and it kept getting extended and extended and extended for 13 years. And I think within that space and time, this 26-year-old woman, right? They put a conservatorship on her, and she's like, wait, what do you mean? So she's fighting against it. And I think maybe that worked against her in making it look like, oh, she needs this conservatorship to save her because look how angry and crazy she is and she's out of control. I'm absolutely guessing at this point. I can only imagine what it would do to me at 26 years old if someone took away absolutely every single right that I had, that she even had a hold of, knowing that everyone was making decisions for her from the minute she was a teenager. You know, I can imagine that is actually the recipe to make someone crazy. They were deciding what medication she took, when that was supposed to change, forced at some point for her to change it to another really intense one that made her feel like she couldn't hold a conversation, tell her when her bedtime is, she wasn't allowed to drive a car. Like, this is a grown woman that had no real evidence of being a junkie, that had no real evidence of being a user or completely out of control, but simply a human being having a really difficult time with her life and a public divorce and everything being plastered everywhere with everyone having an opinion of it. And instead of people turning around and saying, okay, let's help you through this in like a healthy way, let's get therapy or support you through it, or, you know, the idea was, I'm going to control your money and your jobs and make your decisions for you. I feel like that is really awful.
Yeah.
That's harsh and extreme. So let me ask you this. What do you think about, I saw a video of her, I don't know if you saw this, with knives, and she's dancing.
Yeah.
So
they were Halloween knives. They're like fake knives, right? So they were costume ones. And she's been doing her dance videos on Instagram for, I want to say a year or two now. I don't know when the conservatorship ended or when she started to have that freedom. But I think that she had zero, this is my guess, right? My absolute guess and an observation. She had zero freedom for such a long time. She hasn't had the benefit, I guess you would say, of growing up with social media in this age, right? Of learning how to use it, of making the mistakes we make on it and figuring that out. It is just a whole new world for her. And it's also her only portal to share something of herself that someone didn't have control over at the time. And she loved dancing. She did it in her music videos. I think it was really enjoyable for her. And she talks about the fact that she lost the love of performing and singing and creating because she never got to do any of it herself. So this is her expressing herself in all her freedom, maybe in a younger, more immature version of herself, maybe not a 30-something, 38. I think she's around my age-year-old woman. Maybe it's a little bit more like teens and 20s. I think it's just her exploring her freedom and expressing, and maybe that doesn't look the way people want it to look, but like, we're also poking at it because it's Britney Spears. There's a lot of people doing crazy shit on social media with all sorts of things and weird dance moves into songs, but because they're not Britney Spears, we're not poking at it like, oh, that person's unstable. I think we need to allow her to grow and learn.
So what is that? Because to be honest, right, I don't always keep up with the major, headlines of Britney Spears.
Totally. I'm new to this week. Yeah. Right. Yes.
Right. So, but this is such a big question for people because this has been all over. So how would I relate this back to what everyone is going through, right? Or like what people are dealing with. And I think with her, it's sort of how do you live from a place where it's authentic, you want to be you, but also when you have eyeballs on you, like what is the fascination too with picking someone apart in the press? Like you see them out and then people are just raking them over the coals and have an opinion. Like what? I don't know.
What is that?
What do you do with that? Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's been around since the beginning of celebrity, that people either relate to or find comfort in dragging that person down. Like it's, I guess, whether they find representation in them or not, whether they used to find representation in them and now that person no longer holds up that image that this person, or pedestal that this person put them on, and then they're pissed about that they're not upholding this
Well,
image.
and historically, media-wise, it's always seemed like the way it works is they build somebody up, they write these amazing stories until they run out of things to write. And they go, okay, now we need a new headline. So we want the headline to now be the fall of this star that we put on this pedestal. Yeah. And so it's
maybe
they're trying to stretch out a story as long as possible. And so they make all these different sort of versions of it, and they go down all these different roads and rabbit holes, and they try and create news that doesn't exist. We talk about it all the time for that clickbait aspect of it. It's at the end of the day, it's way more interesting to have the new headline front of a magazine that catches someone's attention where they go, "Ooh, I never knew that was happening," compared to, "Oh, it's the same. Oh, we've been hearing for a year and a half how great this person is."
Media is big business, right? Media exists because people want to know things, not just about the news and what's happening, but about other people's lives. And that's why celebrity exists. Otherwise, actors would be actors, and then no one would cover their personal lives.
The problem is too. It's all so relative. Like Sharna and I were talking earlier today about this whole conversation of Britney drinking when she was young with her mom, going and having drinks, and we were trying to figure out how we honestly felt about that, because we have kids. I couldn't imagine sitting with my 14-year-old child having drinks. But my 14-year-old child isn't Britney Spears.
Living the life that she was living.
Hasn't been living the life that Britney was at 14. So I'm not making excuses for anyone. I'm not necessarily here to agree with or disagree with things. I'm just trying to open the conversation and the thoughts for people. It's with, I don't know anyone that's ever been as famous as Britney.
On that kind of level,
in my life. There are really only a few people that you can point to and say, you have Marilyn Monroe, you have Elvis Presley, you have Madonna, you have Prince, you have Michael Jackson, you have Britney Spears. She's part of that group. And that is, and that was at a young age. At the point when she was 14 and having daiquiris with her mom, she'd been famous for how long at that point, and was massive at the point when she was 14.
I don't actually know when her first single dropped, but I know it was really, really early. And even beyond that, like, to add to it, you're talking about her not drinking like an adult, but certainly other aspects of her life, she was treated like an adult on what she was doing, where she was going, what she was wearing, what she was singing.
What's the photo shoot that you were talking about?
The David LaChapelle one that she talked about. She was 16 and I believe she was 16, but she was a young teenager. And at the time she didn't, really think anything of it. She was just innocently in her bedroom, and he was taking photos or doing a shoot with her.
With her stuffed animals.
With her stuffed animals, right? And it was the conversation of, I'll just undo a few more of those buttons there, And it wasn't so he could get a look. It was because that was the image they were presenting, right?
So
sexualizing a teenager.
It then becomes the conversation of, okay, it's the same conversation we have with the legal drinking age compared to the age that somebody can go into the army. It's like, why can someone be drafted at 18 but then can't have a drink until they're 21? Like, it's
all those
some
things.
of the rules don't necessarily make sense. Same thing with, I couldn't possibly put myself in the place of Britney and her mother when that was happening. When you have a child that is as famous as she was, would you look at those moments where you guys could sit down and have something on, like, if you read the ingredients on a daiquiri, that's one of the most innocent of the drinks you could possibly share with somebody. Was that like some sort of a connecting ritual when they had 10, 15 minutes to do,
and no one's saying it's right.
Yeah. Who knows where it came from,
who knows
though?
where
who knows
they were
the story behind it? And that's what's important.
For me, in Australia, is the 18 is the drinking age. We all start drinking from the age of 15. I remember my dad giving me, not like having drinks with me, but I think whiskey was put on my pacifier. We call them dummies when I was little, help them go to sleep. I remember tasting alcohol. There was no, oh, it's bad, don't touch it. I never had a fascination with it like it was an act of rebellion. I think I would say I wasn't. Or maybe, you know what? Yeah, I would have been like 12, 13, 14 when my dad used to love Tia Maria and milk. Like the girliest drink you can imagine. Like it tastes like a coffee liqueur.
What was
milk.
it?
Tia Maria and milk. Like it tastes like a milkshake.
What is Tia Maria?
Tia Maria is a liqueur. I think it's maybe a coffee type liqueur. Someone else can maybe confirm that. But I would ask if I could have one, and he'd be like, "Oh, go on then." And he'd make me a little one, and I'd have one with my dad. It wasn't like I sat and got drunk with him. But it certainly took away, and I'm not saying other parents should do this. I'm not saying my dad was right. He was definitely not right with a lot of shit, right? But this was my experience, and I didn't grow up with an alcohol issue at all, or fascination with it. Was that, every now and then it did happen, or at the barbecues or the whatever, and, someone be like, oh, have a taste of the beer, and it wasn't made like, oh, no, you can't have that till you're 18 years old. And there's something in that too.
Yeah, I think the overlying take on all of this is it's insane for people to judge anyone when you don't know what it's like to be in that person's shoes and in that person's life.
Agreed.
And we don't know. The only two people that truly know what this time was like in her life is Britney and her mother.
Yeah, when it comes to the daiquiris,
and
exactly.
her family. So it's that, that is...
I think you hit the nail on the head, baby.
I'm with you.
Absolutely.
I think you did. And I think that's the reason why we're even bringing this up is even in talking about it, it's speculation. We're looking at it. We're trying to come up with ideas why it is the way that it is and connect these dots.
Right.
And really, we just don't know. Because another side too is if people are drinking at 13, 14, 15, going off with friends and maybe doing some crazy things, then perhaps, them having a daiquiri seems a little bit better. It's in a more controlled environment. She's not going out. I know some
parents that take the stance of you can try those things, but just try them at home with me, so I can monitor and help you be responsible and make sure that you're safe. So there's so many aspects to it, and who knows what the true aspects of this particular time in her life. Who knows the details of those aspects other than the people that were directly involved?
I think, baby, your statement, what you said about you just cannot judge anyone unless you know, and you were not in their shoes, you weren't in the situation. So to judge anyone on, these headlines is really difficult. And I, for one, am excited to read her memoir now. I really want to hear what she has to say now that she finally has the freedom to do it. And I honestly feel like, not that I even know her, but I feel like I owe her that in a sense. I want as many ears to hear her story as possible since she was silenced for so long. So even though I'm not a diehard Britney fan, I do want to honor her story.
You're a fan of humans, right?
Yeah, and I want to honor her story by reading that and giving it my time and space and energy.
Instead of just these snap judgments that, it tends to happen when reading something and quickly putting dots together and going, oh my gosh, she had a daiquiri when she was this age, or she did this and she did that.
Right.
It's like we're talking about a human being where there's complex emotions.
Absolutely.
Who knows what she went through? Who knows the mental state of what it's like to be a celebrity? Look, I was sort of a celebrity / pseudo celebrity just because of the way that I grew up. My dad was famous, so people recognized him. So I was always sort of used to that.
Right.
Tori was famous, and 90210 was massively popular. So, people would recognize her. I saw what that was like. And then when I became an actor and people started recognizing me, it's a weird headspace to walk in, and if someone looks at you, to start to go, oh, well, do they know who I am? Because you're starting to live outwardly. You're no longer just in yourself looking out at the world. You're now sort of aware of what you look like to other people.
People don't realize that the loss of anonymity is such a huge thing to experience in life, because once you lose it, you can never get it back. You never then can become anonymous again.
Oh yeah.
It's, you know, it's like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. That literally is, you cannot go from one to the other and then back to the one again. It just, there's no way for that to happen.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I actually thought we were going to get to more headlines on this episode, but we really jumped in on that one.
I think though that's an easy one in what we were talking about, what we sort of ended the Britney conversation with, going into another big headline, which is the Jada Pinkett Smith headline, which is her book, her life, the judgment that her and her family have gotten based on their own private decisions that, to me, affect nobody but them. I don't know what their story is. I've known Will for a long time. I've run into all of them. From the outside, having been in that space at all, I am so incredibly moved by the way they have raised their kids and
raising good humans.
And yeah, they, from what I have experienced, they take such great pride and they put such effort into that. Their kids are incredibly unique. They have an incredible sense of, there's no insecurity in them at all. They are completely secure in who it is they are. They are kind to people. They're loving to people. And they've done an amazing job. To me, whatever has gone on in their personal life and in their marriage, and whatever choices they have made or haven't made,
they choose to
they have not affected me at all. And I know that the human beings that they have created and then put into the world reflect this concept of being really good people. So that, to me, if I was going to judge anything, that is A+ on what it is I have seen and what has directly affected me or been in my space.
You said something interesting, Brian. You said they're children.
Yeah.
There's no insecurity there.
Right.
And what's fascinating about that is, from the outside, they really do seem incredibly secure.
Yeah.
Confident, sure of who they are in themselves. Yeah. But something that Jada was talking about a lot in, the past couple weeks, because her book is coming out, is about how from the outside, no one would necessarily know that she was suffering, because she talked about at times wanting to take her life.
Yes. And yeah, she talked about that around her 40th birthday.
And the hardest part for her was that people didn't understand, and people would say, what do you mean you're upset, or you're not feeling good, or you're down? What, you have everything. And I think it's an interesting thing, because I have never met their kids. I would say the same as you. That's what they seem like. They seem wonderful. But we just never know what another human being goes through until it's too late, and everyone is surprised, and they go, oh my gosh, I never saw this coming. But it's just so interesting, because that's what Jada said too, is that you just would never know, but inside she was suffering.
Yeah.
And so she talked a lot about that, as well as a lot of other things.
Yeah, she talked about a lot of stuff. I actually tried to do a lot of research on her as well. And one of the things that I listened to beyond reading the headlines, right, I wanted to hear things in her voice, was a podcast that she did with her good friend Jay Shetty, who is he's a motivational speaker, used to be a amazing human that I'm a big fan of. And he was a big reason in why she wrote the book, because a lot of her healing journey she's done whilst knowing him. And she said a quote that struck me and made so much. She said something that I will call a quote. And to quote her, it was, "People think that because you are rich and famous, you are exempt from the human experience." And I was like, Absolutely, they do. They think that because you're Jada Pinkett Smith and you're rich and famous, you have everything, and that you don't get to experience the things that everybody else does: pain, despair, heartbreak, depression, loss. And in her case, and the reason she even wrote the book was that journey from unlovable to lovable, and that big journey that she had coming from having two addict, drug abusing parents, and to coming to LA, and all her journey. And there's so many stories in there I don't know, but the little bits that I heard, her journey to feeling lovable, traveling through suicide and making it through that because of plant medicine, sitting ayahuasca for 4 days. It's an incredible journey. And I said this to both of you when we were speaking about doing this episode. Here's my question. There's all these headlines and there's all these celebrities saying, Jada, enough. We've heard enough. We don't want to hear more. It's an overshare. # free Will Smith and all the rest of it, right? Not only has Will Smith come forward and absolutely championed her and supported her in a beautiful way, showing up for her, why does she not get to share her human experience? Because one of my favorite authors, Glennon Doyle, right? She shares her very human experience of a marriage that was failing, a husband that cheated on her, an eating disorder that was triggered. I believe wanting to, I don't know if she wanted to take her own life, but her own traumatic experience of going through healing. Then her second book addresses that she's now with a woman and discovered that she prefers the company of women. Why are her books considered self-help, but Jada Pinkett Smith's journey from unlovable to lovable is considered gossip and something that we have to put into headlines and pull apart, and people say, I don't want to hear anymore? Why doesn't she get to have the human cathartic experience of expressing herself and sharing her stories, just as we want to do on this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. To share our personal truths and open up conversations to hopefully help someone else? Why doesn't she get to do that without being dragged down like it's for maybe attention or clout or whatever it is that people say, right? That it's too much and stop sharing. And I feel really bad that surrounds her with this book. And I'm sure she's secure and fine and she's on her journey and, she's very, very proud of this book. But me as an outsider looking in, it's like, whether I would do and make the same choices she makes in her marriage is irrelevant. She has found a way to make her life work and for herself to feel lovable and raise healthy, wonderful kids. So what? That book is going to help people. They are going to look at her story and it's going to resonate with them in some way. And it is self-help. It is inspirational. I just think it's a shame that because she's Jada Pinkett Smith, we don't allow her to have that human experience with grace.
I agree with you. I was moved by some of the things that I heard. I listened to a couple podcasts, that being one of them, and I read some articles. And I don't know. I feel like I get the picture of Gladiator and back in, Roman Colosseum times where the crowd can just turn on you so easily. You could be doing so well and everyone loves you, and then all of a sudden something happens and everyone's booing and they want off with your head.
Right.
And they're out for blood. And it's like, are you not entertained?
Yeah.
It's something where, you hear this and it's intriguing to hear the story. So some people will want to listen. And then at some point, and I think this is a good question, is there too much? Right? Is there a line where it feels too much, that maybe it's just for sake of selling a book or putting it out there? I don't know. But what is that fickleness and that line where people go, okay, I want to know about this. And then, oh, stop, please. This is just oversharing here.
I don't know what that line is. I don't know. It's a great question.
I think honestly, it would be different for everyone
right?
involved. It's one story people want to hear more than the other, naturally, unfortunately.
I mean, my big takeaway from this is really that everyone has a story to share. And something I was moved by was the fact that she didn't want to do this. And then she was sitting in meditation, found the the way.
The way,
like
yes.
The title came to her, the way, ooh, worthy.
Yes.
This is my story of worthiness. And I don't know about you, but I certainly can relate to that times in my life when and where I don't feel worthy.
Yeah.
And it is worthy to me to hear anyone's journey from unworthy to worthy, anyone's journey from unlovable to lovable, because that's what I think connects everyone. There's a similarity in that. At some point, we all feel unworthy at maybe one point in life, or unlovable, or not good enough. And the fact that someone can share that and get healing for themselves. And the truth of the matter is, if you don't want to hear this, don't click on it.
Don't read it.
Curate your experience.
Yeah.
Exactly. You don't have to watch or listen or read.
We have that issue just in social media, in when certain headlines are going on, and we're ridiculed for not commenting on them, or we're ridiculed for the comments that we make because they're not necessarily on the side that someone had. It becomes one of those situations where you can't please everybody.
Everyone, right.
So, and it seems from what I've read and what I know of the Smith family in general, that Jada really is taking this journey for herself. She wrote this book for herself. Not to, I mean, I don't understand why someone would think, oh, I'm going to write a book with the detail that her book has, thinking, oh, this is going to clear the air for me, when she's so honest about who she is and where she's come from and what she's experienced and what she is currently going through. She's really putting herself out there to be ridiculed. So I don't know why someone would assume that someone is making that choice just for the purpose of wanting to do that and put themselves out there. I think that's a tough one. I think that's, again, why anyone would ask to put themselves in this sort of a situation, and why they would willingly do this doesn't make much sense to me. But that's just me.
Yeah, no, I think some of the pushback from what I understood was that when she started sharing about her relationship and how they weren't divorced on paper, but they were basically divorced in theory and sort of living their separate lives, is that the public didn't know that. So maybe the public felt that there was some dishonesty there, or the public was let down. And I mean, Brian,
dishonesty to who? Was she dishonest to the public, or was she dishonest to Will? Because from what it sounds like, what it sounds like to me, she was never dishonest with Will. They have their, and honestly, he is the only person that should matter in that situation.
Right.
It's not really the public's business. The fact that any of this has been given to the public is a gift for the public. They've been let into what is honestly a sacred space. Family and marriage and relationships. That is a space that is, to me, to be held by the people that are in it, that are directly affected by it. So she is giving a gift to people that are so curious about it, of giving some inside information and inside experience into what it is to live her life and her experience.
And also giving options, right?
Yeah.
Because it's, hey, a relationship could look like this. You could be together, you could have a life partner and still not be divorced technically, or you could be still working on yourself and still have that partnership.
Totally.
People who were totally traditional might not agree with that, and that's okay. Again,
exactly.
They don't have
weren't we talking about traditional yesterday when we were
discussing this. We were talking, there are many, and I keep accidentally calling it polygamy. Polyamorous. There are many very happy polyamorous couples. It's a different way of living.
What is traditional? Traditional is an odd thing, because it's like, traditional, as far as what decade, like at what point in history are we basing this traditional thought on? Like traditional marriage, traditional relationships, traditional to who, to what? Because to me,
and who cares?
To me, if I look historically,
what does it matter?
What we have done as a society is progressed. So in that sense, then nothing is traditional. tradition is in the eyes of what was normal for them when they were growing up. Like that is, but that, that generation is not the one that is now growing up and married and in relationships. Things are different. Things have changed. The introduction of social media and the internet and all, the world has changed on such a profound level. For us to deny or to not embrace the concept of changing with it, to me is, that's a crime in itself, and you're doing yourself a huge disservice and the people around you, because it's going to change whether you like it or not. So you're either going to roll with it and evolve, or you're going to sit in the past and go, oh, my shirts from when I was in my 20s still fit me. And it's like, okay, that's, if you want to,
right. You fight change.
If you want to live that way, then absolutely. But you can't judge people for not wanting to live the same way you choose to.
Right. And at the end of the day, like we said earlier, if it doesn't fit for you, leave it. Don't keep giving it attention.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
But the fact of, if it doesn't fit for you, and then, you're commenting and you're getting angry and you're saying, oh, this is terrible. You're oversharing. And what are they doing? This is a non-traditional relationship.
Don't follow me and then tell me and then judge me for my views on my page. Like, you are asking to hear my opinion and my thoughts by simply following me, and the act of doing that, and so it's that weird line of people wanting nothing at all, but then wanting everything at the same time. So you can't have both. You have to kind of pick a lane.
So I think that's all the time we have for headlines today. But I actually would really love to hear what other people think of some of these headlines that we've talked about, or how they handle them. Like, do you get riled up over them? Do you get personally invested in celebrity stories? What is that? Why do you feel personally invested in celebrity stories? Why do you think people are mad at Will and Jada for being secretly separated for 7 years? Do you think Britney's memoir is the right thing to do for her? I'm really curious to hear what other people think
this could
and
be
why
such
they're invested.
A fun Q&A episode following this one, because I'm so curious to hear, like you said, what the reactions are, how invested people are, what their thoughts on this topic outside of ours, because we are inside of kind of a bubble as far as dealing with it. So I'm curious. I'm always curious to hear both sides of something and hear all the perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and it's a perspective that we won't get without your involvement. So please reach out to us.
Yeah, everyone, let us know. Cannot wait to speak to you guys. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yes, you guys are amazing. Make sure you guys go and follow us on Instagram at oldishpod. And you can also go and leave us a message at our own hotline, which is 855-OLDISH-3.
Make sure and write us a review. Leave us 5 stars if you loved it. Leave us 5 stars if you didn't.
We love 5 stars. We love 5 stars.
Yeah. We like 5 stars.
Yeah. See you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you next week, everyone.